Welcome to the Value Maker podcast. My name is Ryan Purvis. I'm your host, supported by Heather Bicknell, as we meet with the people that make the digital workspace work. It's about the technology, it's about improving people's work experience and finding the return on value. So Louise, welcome to the Value Makers podcast. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Great. Well, yeah, thanks very much for having me, Ryan. So I'm Louise, CEO of AirAware Labs and co-founder along with my partner, Will Hicks. We met about a year ago now as part of the Zinc Venture Builder. He came out of academia, I came out of government. And between us, we both thought there's something to be done here on air pollution, making it real and relevant to individuals so that they can protect their health. And we decided to establish AirAware Labs.
Great. And you kind of started answering the question of how do you bring value to your customers? But maybe you want to explore that a bit further.
Yeah, definitely. So our kind of assessment of the problem that we're trying to solve. Obviously, air pollution in itself is an enormous problem, and we hope we're contributing to that. But in terms of users, the exact problem we're trying to solve is the lack of detailed data that gets into people's hands that can help them to avoid their exposure to air pollution. We know that air pollution varies enormously across space and time, but typically, if you wanted to find out your local air pollution, you'd just get very generic data that doesn't show you anything about how to make that relevant to your life and how you can go about reducing your exposure. So we are filling that gap. And we did, obviously, right from the very start, we did a lot of user engagement to work out what sort of levels of concern on the part of users about it, what they do to currently address that concern. And yeah, we found a few things. One was that there is a high level of concern amongst particularly parents, also people with long-term health conditions, and also people who are exercising outdoors who are generally concerned about their health, but that they didn't really have anything to draw on to help them understand what they could do about it. But equally, they said that they wouldn't probably go to a standalone platform to manage their air pollution data. They'd want to see it in other places, which that they were already using, which took us on to our first product launch, which was with an integration with Strava, so that we could offer Strava users their detailed air pollution data.
That's quite interesting. So you're a data aggregator and you're providing it as an output to other applications.
Yeah, so we're taking high resolution modeled air pollution data, and then we're layering on top of that our in-house personal exposure algorithms that attach to your GPS. So we're taking into account where you are, what time of day, how fast you're moving through that space, which will give an indication of how heavily you're breathing, and then give people that data about their exposure, along with, importantly, insights into what they can do to reduce it.
So where does the data actually come from? Is it government or institutes collecting the data, or private individuals with this sort of IoT device?
Yeah, so we use a Google API to get the base layer of air pollution data, and that uses traffic flow data, uses meteorological conditions and satellite data, and then it cross-references it against fixed location sensors that are open source data. So yeah, so it gives a high degree of spatial accuracy. So fixed location sensors or hardware that you can carry around with you will only give a certain amount of detail. Obviously, fixed location doesn't tell you much about where things are in between the fixed locations, and personal sensors don't give much in the way of predictive capability. So yeah, we think that this offers something quite different and unique to users.
And with that collection, and I mean, is there sort of verification of that process? So you're looking at multiple data sources, you're overlaying them, and you say, okay, this is within normal, this is certain level of error rate to the data as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a bit of QAing the data just for our own sort of reassurance that we're giving people the right information, and we're happy with that. One of the difficulties that we have in presenting the data to people is, firstly, there's a lot of different pollutants out there. We have available, I think, 7 different pollutants, but we're mainly presenting 2 of them to people at the moment, which is nitrogen dioxide and fine particulate matter, PM2.5. And they vary in slightly different ways. So one of our challenges has been working out how best to present that data that gives kind of the right level of information to people, because often users come back and tell us it's too scientific. We don't need all of that. We just want a single number, or we want a rag racing or whatever. But we also don't want to disguise the sort of different aspects of air pollution, because they can affect you in different ways. So we've been thinking quite heavily about how best to present it. And then the other challenge that we have with the data is the product is global. So we've got users across every continent in the world now, which is very exciting. But with that comes the fact that the air pollution levels are very different as well. So we don't necessarily think it's very helpful to just tell people, say in the UK, it's all fine, everything's in a sort of green bracket and don't worry about it. And equally, we don't think there's much point in telling somebody in a heavily polluted city like New Delhi that it's all terrible and they're stuck. There is still the variation that we want to get across to people, so that they can choose the sort of cleanest possible routes for the situation that they find themselves in. So that's been another challenge. Rather than using indices that often are used globally, we don't think that that's actually that helpful to individuals in a particular place and time. So yeah, we've been getting our heads around the data and the best way to present it for users.
I can understand that. When I was with Hilo, we had the same problem. We were predicting critical injuries and death,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to get that into a simple picture that explained this, and it was all about the event. If this event occurred, the probability of this occurring at being critical injury or death would be X factor. And the way it was originally presented was per 1,000 vessel years, which is very hard to bring that down to, well, is that going to happen next week or next month or next year?
Yeah.
And it was quite a lot of cycles to basically say, well, your chance of a critical injury or death will happen in 1 month based on this prediction, or 1 year. And that makes it a bit more real. Now, I'm wondering, while you're talking, do you see, with the data that you've got, you've aggregated, you provide some insight, do you see how cities are changing their things? Like I was in Paris over the weekend, and I saw a lot of electric buses, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And are you able to sort of correlate the changeover from a diesel or a petrol bus, or probably a diesel bus, to electric, and see how that drops the pollution down at all?
Yeah. I mean, we're not doing that ourselves, but I mean, potentially that's something that we could do in future. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of study around how policy changes are shifting the levels of air pollution. I mean, it has to be done quite carefully, because air pollution does change quite a lot, like season to season. So you can't say, I introduced an electric bus fleet in September and look, it's so much better than August. Like, that just wouldn't be valid. But yeah, there's lots of people doing that kind of analysis to demonstrate the difference. And certainly moving bus fleets away from diesel is, if cities can do that, that's for sure. I mean, large amounts of nitrogen dioxide, but also particulate matter that come out of tailpipes. But unfortunately, particulate matter doesn't go away with that. There is still quite a lot of brake wear and tire wear that goes on as a result of electric vehicles as a whole. So yeah, we're obviously keeping an eye, and particulate matter is now generally seen to be the biggest risk to human health, because it can enter into every organ in your body. It can go across the placenta into the unborn child. So it's seen as a really major issue. So yeah, it's a great step, but it's not going to take everything away that we need to keep an eye on.
That sounds really scary. So what are mitigations that someone could take if they wanted to reduce their exposure to these things?
Yeah, so you can definitely look at how particulate matter changes your local area. Because it doesn't move like a gas. Gases change, like nitrogen dioxide changes a lot. So one road to the next road can be very different in terms of nitrogen dioxide. Slightly less so for particulate matter, but there still will be some variations. But the main way in which it changes is over time. So it tends to build up through the day, can take a while to disperse overnight. If people are wood burning in their homes, then it probably may not disperse at all overnight, sadly. And then often, if you're lucky, it will be lower in the early morning hours. So we would probably recommend keeping an eye on how all of that is changing, and organising if you're doing particularly heavy exercise, to do that as early as you can. But these are the kind of insights that we've got on our AirTrack dashboard that we've rolled out recently.
Is your tool available to anybody, or do you have to be like a business or?
Yeah, it's available to anybody. We have a free level, so you can get your data integrated onto your Strava feed. That's the one thing at the moment that people need to do, is to connect up with Strava. But if you don't have a Strava account, you can create one pretty easily. I have to admit that I did not have one until I got myself into this. So I was one of those users. So yeah, so it's pretty simple. And then on the dashboard, you can see your 10 recent activities, so that you can see how the pollution levels have varied. And then for a monthly subscription, we've got a premium level where you get detailed maps, so that you can see the worst bits of your route, so that you can avoid those, and see all of this hour by hour variation that I was just talking about. So yeah, so it's a paid version as well.
So do you need to go, and is there a mobile app for you to sign up with, or is it all desktop?
At the moment, it's desktop. Yeah, we will. It's very much on our tech development roadmap to move into having an app. And yeah, we would hope to be able to have an app in the next 6 months as well. So obviously, tends to be a bit easier for people to manage.
Yeah, people are very appified, and they prefer an app so they can, it feels like it's a much slicker experience. But not
Yeah.
pretty. If you're doing an integration to something else like Strava, I use Strava as a record, not for my actual tracking on exercise, but
Mhm.
almost as because it goes into my diary. It's kind of a bridge anyway.
Yeah.
But now that you've mentioned the integration, I'm quite curious to see what it's like. We live outside of the city, so I tend to think our pollution would be quite low, but now I want to see real. And we've got those Dyson fans. They've got filters in them. It measures the air quality. So we typically use those as a metric. But I was a big fan of data, so I'm curious
Yeah.
to see. I think so. So how did you come up with the idea of doing this? I mean, it's not even a year old, so it must be fairly fresh in what problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah. So my background in air pollution is, before deciding to take the plunge and set up a company, was involvement in a community scheme called Breathe London, where we have lots of open source sensors. And I just got more, like, over the past year, 2-3 years, I just got more and more interested in the data and how we could use it better for public awareness and health, and just saw so many gaps in it, basically, and started to look into the data, realized that it is so different across space and time, as I've said, and like just to have a level of frustration that's not getting to people. And from where I live in Brixton, seeing people just cycling up Brixton Road to get to work, when they it's like, I know for sure that there's far better alternatives for them. I know from my local sensor how bad the NO2 is. It can be completely crazy at
Well,
times on Brixton Road. So yeah.
I mean, there's a sad irony in the sense that they think they're getting a good, healthy bit of exercise, but actually they're just ingesting more and more pollution.
Well, I mean, our kind of company ethos is to still, like, definitely get out there and do the exercise, and the scientific literature will say, the exercise benefits are still outweighing those downsides. But what we would say then is, but choose the best possible route for you, and it doesn't mean going completely the wrong direction or just sort of messing with your lifestyle. There will, in many cases, be a really good, reasonable alternative that will give you a much lower exposure. And it's just getting that into people's hands, really, and yeah, show them the difference that it can make.
So I have now signed up on your portal while we're
Okay, cool.
talking, which is really a really good sign because it's really quick, really easy.
Wow, that's good.
Um, and I like your design. It's very slick. So, and it's already connected me with Strava while we were
Good.
talking. Again,
Good.
very quick and easy. And I'm looking at all my events, and I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
So my walk before our call was an NO2 of 19.4,
Hmm.
and my latest NO2 reading is 19. What's it? Parts per million, I would think. Per thousand.
Micrograms per cubic
Mic-
meter.
yeah, micrograms. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember what the new means. And
Yeah.
then my PM 2.5 is 4.3.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Um,
not too bad. Not too bad. What time
okay.
of the day were they?
Well, that would have been now at from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you're within the daily guidelines there, so you're okay. But it, I mean, the WHO guidelines are there to say sort of at a policy level, what should countries and cities be aiming for. But from a health perspective, there's no
Well,
kind of safe levels. So there's always improvements that you could make. But yeah, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, not too bad, I would say, those levels.
well, if I give you the measurements from 6 o'clock this morning, when I went for my
Mhm.
first walk of the day, 8.9 for the NO2
Mhm.
and 2.7 for the PM 2.5.
Yeah, there you go. So you can see the difference. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then if I give you Paris on Saturday, Paris, middle of the day, was 22.6 for NO2 and 6.5 for PM 2.5.
Okay.
And that's a big
Was
city.
that was that a weekend or?
Yeah, that was Saturday.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. There you go. Live experiments. Yeah. So as I say, they're not shocking. I mean, I've had some readings locally in Brixton that have got up into the 90s on NO2, which is pretty terrible.
Wow.
But yeah, it's not bad. But long-term exposure to air pollution, and if you've got a particular health condition, sort of short-term exposure can obviously cause difficulties. So just try to keep it as low as you can. Those morning walks, they're brilliant, great tonic.
Yeah, yeah. So it's an exercise or a routine called 75 hard. You've got to do 2 workouts a day.
Right.
And I just find that 6 o'clock in the morning walk, even though it's in the dark, it'd be so nice. And it's in a forest. So we can't do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
recommend it.
So, well, there you go. And you can also, next time you go, know that you're probably doing the best for your avoidance of pollution as well.
Just one more reason to get up early.
Yeah.
like I need one.
Yeah.
No, this is great. And I mean, tell me about your plans for the future with this now. Where are you going next? Is it always going to just be air pollution? You look at noise as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like adjacent things that people raise with us. Probably the one from the users that gets raised the most is pollen counts. If we
Oh,
can bring that in, we haven't made a decision on that at the moment, but it's quite possible. Yeah, we could do that if it's really valuable to people. The main product development we want to do is bring in more predictive capacity. So the air pollution model that we're using has got decent predictive capacity up to about 48 hours. So we can then attach that to sort of clean air route planning approach, software approach that we would bring in and bring people more prediction, which I think would be really helpful. That will drive a lot of value. Because yeah, at the moment it's kind of after the fact, and it's like giving users data, but ultimately expecting them to sort of figure out what they then do with the data. Yeah, if we can bring in more prediction and recommendations and personalized recommendations and so on, I think that would bring a lot of value. We've integrated with Strava. We're interested to see if there's other fitness apps that offer more of that sort of route planning side of things that could be a good way to go as well. And then we're looking at employee wellbeing packages, because obviously there's the impact for the individuals, but also from the perspective of an employer, if they've got people who've had less exposure to air pollution, for example, if they're cycling into work, they'll be more productive during the day. And yeah, we think we can bring benefits at various levels through that approach. So we've got a bit of a push on that at the moment.
yeah. I mean, I think all those things are very useful. And then I forgot about pollen as a big factor. I mean, when I grew up in South Africa, and pollution's a problem there without a doubt, but you don't deal with the sinus problems like you do here. I basically live on antihistamines for most of
Yeah.
the changeover in the season. And it would be a very interesting data point. I'd also be curious if you were ever able to take this down to the actual health device, like the person's health device unit. So like I've got an Oura Ring, I've got an Apple Watch, all those things that are telling you your respiratory rate and they're telling you heart rate and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I wonder if it's a lot of data to process and to correlate, but it'd be very interesting to see if your respiratory rate changed for the better or the worse, depending on what the pollution levels were.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, Aura Rings definitely of interest. Garmin, all of these things. Yeah, I mean, on the sort of health data or metrics. There's definitely some stuff that we can do around that kind of understanding the correlation. I mean, the scientific literature would suggest that yes, it would have an impact on heart rate variability and so on, but we can then start to get that at really, really granular level. So yeah, that is part of our overall plans as we go forward. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting, very interesting space. So your commercial model is obviously someone like myself signing up on a subscription. Do you sell the data then that you've collected as well to other apps, or is it all that is it all partner driven?
Not at the moment. I mean, what we would like to be able to do is integrate with platforms such as people who are offering solutions for low carbon commuting and that kind of thing. So there'd be some sort of kind of upfront agreement around use of the data for those. But no, for now, it's really about bringing the personalised recommendations to individuals.
Yeah, that's very cool. What's your user base like at the moment, a month down the road?
Yeah, so I think it's 720 users that have come through the Strava integration. We launched the premium subscription model a month ago. So we have a number of users. I think I'll keep the exact number to myself. But I can tell you that it's across 3 continents, which is also very exciting. So it's like instantly global. So yeah, I mean, our free user base is across 6 continents, our paid user base across 3. So it's very exciting, the potential.
No, it's great. I mean, I don't have a use for it yet to be paid, but the free version would work really well for me. But I could see how over time, especially like I do London trips and all that kind of stuff. Like I saw some of the maps you'd had hidden there for some of those trips, and I actually would be curious to see what London would be like when I go in versus where I'm at home. Because I definitely find when I go into London for a day, I come home far more tired.
Yeah.
And I guess, yes, there's a fatigue of walking around, but I think there's also the equality concern.
Yeah. And can I ask what, like, as a potential user, like, what would you then do with that? Because obviously you still need to go to London, but what sort of actions would you take?
Well, I would probably experiment with a few things. One, I'd look at the time of day I go in. So I tend to avoid the peak time anyway in the mornings. I tend to go in after sort of 9 o'clock. Mostly because I don't like a lot of people around me when I'm on the train.
Okay.
But if the pollution made a difference, I would do it on that basis too. I tend to not take the tube and I tend to walk. So it might affect my routes that I would take. So I think you're right on the money with that.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, kind of going down a bit of a tangent. I do enjoy walking around London because you find really weird things when you walk around London. Like you take certain paths and you can get, I mean, you can almost take the wrong turn here or there, but that's part of the fun of it. But it would affect how I traveled around London.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be important. And then I think just from a general health point of view, I don't try and limit my time in London, but if I find that coming back out of London, for example, it's less pollution after a certain time or more, that would affect what time I left.
Yeah. And when you mentioned having the Dyson fans, is that for your indoor air quality? Yeah. And like, would you use them more if you knew you'd had a sort of high level of exposure during the day, or would that not kind of enter your thought process?
It's there. I mean, I've tried to enable it. I have to be honest, and this is not a direct attack at Dyson, but I think Dyson fans are pretty crap. So they haven't impressed me at all. But I have looked at other alternatives. And as I said, I don't think we're in a very polluted area. But if we were, I would definitely have them running all day.
Yeah.
And I think, much like we talk about, neurodiversity coming up more and more, people being diagnosed with autism and ADHD and all that stuff. And now it's like a pandemic. I think a lot of these things are all just environmental things that we're now seeing because we can now understand the data and basically label it a bit better. And I think, you look at sugar, you look at alcohol, you look at air quality, you look at noise, you look at light, you look at healthy habits, all those things in various ways can make you a better person or more sick person. And I think something like air quality, people don't worry about it because they can't find an easy way to see it. And because, unless there's smoke that changes the color of the air, they assume the air is okay. That's the problem.
Yeah, it's definitely invisible. And most of the time it's invisible. And also people assume that there's nothing they can do about it. But that's really the gap that we're trying to get into. Like, we know that it was part of my own personal route into this. Like I've decided to live in London. I'm going to make the best possible, that I can from living in London with a family.
Yep.
And knowing that you don't have to just accept it. There are ways that you can mitigate, just like you would, with a child, make sure you cross the road safely, or, whatever things that you just generally do in life, that you can also apply that to air pollution if you've got the right data to hand.
Yeah. And I mean, as I say, I grew up in South Africa in Joburg. Joburg's got the biggest forest in the world inside a city. And I find it with a lot of South Africans, when they move here, they move out of the cities as fast as they can to get green. And like I say, I go for a walk in the forest every morning, and makes me a better person. So I think those are the kind of things that we would continue with if we lived here longer and long term, and, planting more trees and more bushes or whatever it is to mitigate that. And I mean, is the plan for you guys at some point, and then this could be the very far distant future or however it is, to come up with your own device for the house, for the home, or is that outside of your
don't know at the moment. I mean, generally we've kind of made an active decision to go down the software and not hardware perspective. I think partly because there's a lot of companies already in that space.
But you could integrate with something or partner with something.
Yeah, exactly. And partly because I sort of have an overall approach to life that there's already a lot of stuff in this world, and I don't necessarily want to bring more stuff into this world. But yeah, I think more likely it would be a bit of a partnership. I mean, we're keen, if this takes off, to work with indoor air pollution companies so that an individual can get like a real sort of 24-hour sense of what they're being exposed to, and give them sort of different strategies at different times of the day. So yeah, it would probably be more likely a kind of partnering arrangement. But, never say never.
Well, you mentioned having a young child. And my fascination when my son was born, or even before he was born, it was the baby kids market for products. And I'm just thinking now, in the same token, like having an air monitoring purifier for your kid, your baby, probably sell really well.
There was, I've forgotten the name of the company, but there was a company that did something around purifying the air around pushchairs. But I think the hardware just didn't work very well.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I mean, around the pushchair is probably not going to be the right place. I mean, around where you're sleeping is probably the most important, I think.
Yeah,
but how do you test that right? That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with kids is they are definitely more susceptible to it. I mean, even before birth, it has an impact on the unborn child. They're closer to the traffic, so they're breathing in more fumes. They move faster, breathe more quickly. There's definitely a susceptibility there, and parents will generally, want to do anything that they can to reduce health risks for their children. So yeah, there's a lot that we can bring to that. Obviously, like at the moment, our product, which is, as you know, integrated with Strava, is not necessarily the thing that's right for sort of managing the life of a small child. But if we can find like the right sort of tech platform to help on that front, that would be really, an important thing for us in terms of our mission.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, ideas as we're talking. But yeah, I love what you're doing. I think it's a great, I wouldn't say idea or concept, because I think it's a bit more mature than that. Great initiative, probably better. And I'm curious about your ESG plans. I mean, are you going to tie this to some sort of financial model for a company or an employer to say, well, you got offices in these areas, this is what it's costing you from a productivity point of view, or I don't know. I think you might have covered a little bit of this earlier, but.
Yeah, we definitely think that our offer is really relevant to corporates from, it could be from the perspective of that they want to encourage a cycle to work scheme, but their employees are concerned about levels of air pollution while cycling. So, give this as a sort of good way to find clean routes once we've got that predictive stuff up and running. It could be more from, sort of employee productivity. It could be around, if you're asking your employees to travel internationally, like giving them the data that they would need, a bit like, you're planning your trips to London, but on a more international basis, like helping people to understand if they're moving abroad. So there's, I think, lots of different ways. A lot of companies want to show leadership around this, but maybe don't have a kind of way in. And so we think that our offer can be a sort of nice starting point for companies to get up to speed on the impacts of air pollution, sort of, but with a direct impact on their staff.
Yeah, I was thinking, what about, I was thinking about air travel was a good one. That obviously is one that often gets slated for pollution. And we kind of joke always about COVID when there was no aircraft flying over in the sky. We had the best summer ever here in the UK.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some evidence that it makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the sort of overall maps of London and pollution, the worst parts are central London and around Heathrow. Like, it's no getting away from it. If you're somewhere near the runways in where you're living, it can be pretty bad.
Well, and that's why I asked the question about sort of correlating it with noise.
Yeah.
Because, a big city is obviously very noisy and also very polluted in various ways. Yeah. I mean, you could, once you got this platform in place, you can go a lot of directions. I guess it's about staying on top of it. Great. Anything else you want to share?
No, I mean, really, really good. I think the other aspect of it is just thinking about the sort of Heathrow and all of that is just, we need to keep mindful of like the environmental kind of injustice side of things, where communities with the sort of least resources to manage their lives are potentially or most likely to be the ones with the biggest exposure to air pollution and the biggest health impacts of that. So that's just something that we, as a business, it's quite hard because that's not where the buying power is. Like, it's sort of very obviously like there's a disconnect there. So that's something in our mission that we want to make sure we're always offering that, and that's partly why we've kept the free offer as well as having the premium that we want to be able to bring it to the people who need it the most, as well as the ones who can pay, essentially. So yeah, I think that's the other thing that's really driving us.
Fantastic. Great. Or maybe leave it there. If you want people to get in contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram and Twitter. We're AirAware Labs HQ. And my email is, or you can find me on hello@airawarelabs.com. Our website is airawarelabs.com. So
Fantastic.
one way or another, we're very accessible. And just, really love hearing from people, whatever it is, even if it's, challenging. Feedback from users is the most valuable as well. So we're always really happy to hear from people.
Super. Great stuff. Well, thanks so much for your time today as we go chatting with you.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much, Ryan. Really good to talk.
Thank you for listening to our episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share it with your friends and colleagues. Help us grow our network. Please also check out our website at www.value.work and our product that's on there. It's something we worked really hard on. We hope to benefit you.